Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, accountability matters. If you're paid from an appropriation for the White House office or appointed by the President, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, you need to be held to a standard of utmost impartiality. These folks are paid generous salaries and have large platforms as cabinet secretaries or senior White House aides. The monetary penalty should reflect their increased responsibility compared to rank-and-file employees. The American people have had enough of the swamp and its efforts to infuse authoritarianism into the fabric of American society. This amendment, which raises the penalty from $10,000 to $50,000 for senior officials who abuse the office to violate Americans' constitutional rights, deserve a costly penalty. I urge adoption of this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman, your reserves. For what purposes, gentleman from New York, seek recognition?
I rise in opposition to the amendment at the desk.
Gentleman is recognized.
You know, the problem with these civil penalties is not that it's going to bankrupt any government officials, but it has a tremendous chilling effect on anyone trying to do their job, on any federal law enforcement or intelligence community official who's trying to protect our country, trying to enforce our laws, trying to keep Americans safe, trying to keep our democracy safe. Because what these penalties will do is create an amorphous barrier to this amorphous law, where no one has any idea whether what they're doing is lawful or unlawful, because who is to define lawful speech? Well, traditionally, it is a court, and it is government officials who have to make that initial call, that initial discretionary decision, whether or not speech is lawful. In what world, if they're risking a $50,000 fine, are they ever going to take a risk to actually try to do something that might be on the line? And so what these penalties will ultimately do is encourage good, upstanding, patriotic American federal officials not to pursue their jobs, not to do their jobs in the way that we, the American people, need them to do their jobs, in a way that keeps us safe, in a way that enforces our criminal laws, in a way that protects us. That will not happen because they are going to be fearful that they will lose a third to a quarter of their salary if they violate this H.R. 140. So why on earth would anyone take a chance if they're going to lose a third of their salary for an entire year on actually executing their job if they run the risk that someone somewhere is going to say that they stepped over the line and that in retrospect, speech that they thought might be in furtherance of a crime wasn't actually in furtherance of a crime, and therefore they lose their job and they lose a third of their salary. It has an incredible trickle-down detrimental effect on any federal official trying to do his or her job. And whether or not you realize that, that is how it is going to be perceived by every hardworking, patriotic American who has decided to go to work for their government. So you may think, my friends on the other side of the aisle, that the real problem here are federal government officials. And you would be sorely mistaken, because I spent 10 years as a federal career government official, working alongside every single law enforcement agent we had, and they are all trying to do their best. And what this law will do is it will prevent them from doing their best, and it will jeopardize every American in this country because of it. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
The purpose of this amendment is to create greater accountability, responsibility, thoughtfulness in these cabinet secretaries and senior officials, so that it's not partisan politics that rules the day, but rather the American people, or the interests of the American people. Mr. Chairman, I yield time as necessary to the gentleman from Kentucky, Chairman Comer.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of the Ogles Amendment. The Protecting Speech from Government Interference Act introduces newly created civil fines for the most senior officials. My colleague's amendment further strengthens this enforcement penalty for senior officials by increasing the potential civil monetary fines up to $50,000. This $50,000 will serve as a deterrent to the administration's most senior officials, Senate-confirmed presidential appointees, and the White House staff, to prevent them from censoring the lawful speech of ordinary Americans. It's especially important that our nation's most senior leaders are held to a higher level of accountability, given their higher level of influence. I thank the gentleman from Tennessee for proposing this amendment, which preserves the carefully negotiated structure of the bill. I ask my colleagues to vote yes on the amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields.
I yield.
Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
I yield.
Gentleman yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Tennessee. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.